Welcome. I'm Nick Sirota, Chair of Arts Council England. I've been in the post for the past 18 months. It's a role that is a real privilege because I believe everyone benefits from experiencing and interacting with art and culture. At the Arts Council, we're dedicated to bringing those benefits to more people and to communities across England. Every year we publish our annual review containing our accounts. It helps us to reflect on the past year and to look forward to the challenges ahead. Today is the first time we'll be live streaming a conversation about this, and we are keen for you to ask members of our executive team any questions you might have. We're always striving to be more open and transparent about our work and decision making. I hope that this live stream will help. This year, we're developing our strategy for the Arts Council for the period 2020-2030. Darren, Liz and Eddie will be talking about this, but the principle of opening the arts to more people in new ways will lie at the heart of the new strategy. We'll now move on to the live section, but I do want to thank arts organisations, partners in government and local authorities, foundations, trusts and individuals who work together to create such a range and excellence of the arts in this country. So let's get started, and thank you for joining us.
Hello and welcome to Ask Ace, our first ever year in review live, coming to you from Broadway Cinema and Arts Venue in Nottingham. I'm Eddie D'Souza, Director for Investment, Operation and Resources at Arts Council England, and I'll be your host today. Before we get started, I would like to thank our Chair, Sir Nick Sirota, for his welcome. I would also like to introduce you to our other panel members, Liz Bushell, our Executive Director and Chief Financial Officer, and Darren Henley, our Chief Executive Officer. Hello to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning. Darren, Liz and I will be talking about how the last year has gone for us as an organisation, and we'll also be answering questions that you've been putting to us over the last few weeks. We've had lots of questions come through, and whilst we can't answer them all, we have themed our discussion today to make sure we're covering lots of topics that you want to know about. If you want to ask us a question, you still have time. Please do so on the Ask Ace hashtag and we'll do our best to answer them this morning. If we don't get time to answer your question today though, we will come back to you separately. So to start the questioning, Darren, why are we here today? Why are we doing this event?
Well, we're a public body and we spend taxpayers' money and National Lottery players' money, and we want to make sure we're as accountable as possible. So we are embracing the digital future, embracing the technology and doing this live online for the very first time. So before, we've always had printed documents. Now there's an opportunity to have a live interaction, and we want people to be able to talk to us and to be able to ask us questions, and for us to hopefully be able to answer them.
Of course, brilliant. And Liz, why are we here at the Broadway?
So we're here at Broadway because Broadway is one of our national portfolio organisations. We fund its Near Now programme, which is a programme that enables creative collaboration and innovation, enabling people to create new art using technology.
Brilliant. Thanks both. And since we're talking about Broadway, we thought we'd show you this very short clip that showcases some of the great work that Broadway do. Take a look. If you want to find out more about the Broadway's work, you can do so by visiting broadway.org.uk. So, Darren and Liz, we're here today to talk about our last year, and particularly 17-18. And I want to ask you both for your kind of personal highlights from that year. But being the ultimate professional host that I am, I'm going to chip in and start us off. So I'm one of our investment centre directors, and I spend most of our time in one of our offices. But last October, I decided that it was good for me to reconnect with where I started my arts career. So I did a music degree at Canterbury, and I started as a theatre arts administrator in Margate. So last October, I went to the Gulbenkian Theatre in Canterbury, again one of our MPOs, and saw a wonderful piece of children's theatre. I then hot-footed it to Turner Contemporary, Visual Arts Gallery, where I saw Tracy Emin's The Bed and Anthony Gorman's Structures in the Sea. And then finally I made my way to Sadler's Wells, where I saw Jasmine Vardaman's Pinocchio piece. What was great through all of them was to see the diversity of audiences, and there were a few surprises for me along the way. But it was great to me to go back to where I started my arts career and know that there's so much flourishing in the county of Kent that's going across the country. So that's mine. Darren, what's your personal highlight?
Well, for me, I think you can't look at 2017 without looking at the success of Hull City of Culture. I mean, a fantastic 12 months for a really great city. I think what's really important is we saw there what can happen with sustained strategic investment in arts and culture in a place. We saw how the people who live in that place kind of redefined the way they felt about the place. They knew it was great, but what they knew at the end of that year was that everyone else knew that it was great as well. And that story has carried on. We saw a 300% increase in our grants for the arts applications from Hull, so more artists making art in Hull. We had 5.3 million people going and visiting things there, and 95% of the population took part in a cultural activity during that 12 months. And the important thing for us is it didn't stop at the end of December 17. It's carrying on, and there will be a lasting legacy there. It has changed the place.
Brilliant. And do you think Hull has set a really high standard for what Coventry will have to follow in 2021?
Absolutely. So Coventry will be there in 2021. They've already got a great team in place that they've put in. They've got some great partnerships there. Collaboration with people like Coventry University and Warwick University, very, very strong there. And I think one of the things we did learn from Hull was that importance of people coming together and working together. And I think for us as the Arts Council to be at the hub of that is really, really important, but we can't do it on our own. Great local authority investment, great national government investment, and a really, really strong profile for art and culture from this country on the international stage as well.
Brilliant. Liz, what about you? What was your highlight?
So for me, the highlight for this year has been working on the factory project in Manchester. So this is a 111 million project to build a multi-arts venue in central Manchester. It's going to be an amazing space and it's going to deliver great work in Manchester. And I've been working with Manchester City Council, who are leading that project, and with Manchester International Festival, who are going to be the operator of the building. And we as the Arts Council are responsible for 78 million of public funding that's going into that project. And work actually started on site this year in the summer, which has been really exciting to see.
Oh, brilliant. As a new resident of Salford, I look forward to experiencing what Arts and Culture the Factory will provide for us. Liz, we're here today also to talk about the annual report and accounts that we do on a yearly basis, and we've published our 2017-18 accounts. Can you kind of pick out the kind of three key facts and figures that we'd really find useful to kind of digest?
Yeah, sure. So, and we've got some slides to help me do this. So the first slide talks about who we are and the people that work here. So we have just under 500 people who work at the Arts Council around the country. We have 9 offices located around the country, one in each of the government regions. Something that's really important for us to be connected to all of the areas of the country that we work with. And one of those offices is here in Nottingham. And we have a governance body. We have over 90 people involved in the governance of the Arts Council. That includes our Board of Trustees, our National Council, and our 5 area councils who are drawn from the regions that those areas support. The next slide shows where our income comes from. So you can see for 17-18 we've received just under 500 million from government grant and aid, from Treasury funding, and 228 million from the National Lottery. So that works out at about 70% of our income coming from government grant and aid and 30% from the National Lottery. And you can see that that income has been relatively stable over the last 2 years, which has been great for us in ensuring that we sustain our investment in arts and culture. And the final slide I wanted to show just shows where our money has gone, our investment for 17-18, and you're going to hear a bit more about some of those programmes of work as we go through this morning. So you can see here that the largest chunk of our money, just under 350 million, has gone to national portfolio organisations and major partner museums. That number is a big number this year in particular, because as well as the 17-18 grant and aid grants to our national portfolio organisation, it also includes the lottery money that is going into our national portfolio organisations for the next round for 18 to 22. We then have around 71 million that's going into Grants for the Arts, which is our project grants programme. We have 94 million going into various strategic funds that we run. 75 million going to music education hubs, a programme we run on behalf of the Department for Education. 102 million on capital funding, of which a big chunk of that is the factory that I talked about. And in total, we've given over 6,000 grants over the last year, including 676 of those to national portfolio organisations and major partner museums.
Wow. Thank you very much for that, Liz. So Liz has kind of highlighted our investment streams, and I'm imagining watching this live stream are people that are very aware of what the Arts Council does, but also some new people to the Arts Council. So we're just going to talk a bit more about our investment streams. The first one that I'd like to talk about is our national portfolio of organisations. They provide the arts and culture infrastructure to this country. Darren, last year we announced our new portfolio for 18 to 22, which came into effect on the 1st of April. Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, sure. We announced it in June last year. 829 different organisations, 183 brand new organisations coming into the portfolio, 168 organisations that are diverse-led. So some really, really exciting numbers there, up and down the country and across all art forms. Some of the things that we did for the first time this time round, 4-year funding agreements. We listened to people and they told us very much that they felt that 4-year was more helpful for them in terms of business planning and also in terms of the workload of making the application rather than 3 years. We also banded the applications, so smaller organisations have a slightly less onerous task in terms of filling things in. We understand still there are things we can do more around that, and we're always looking at doing better in that area. And we also, for the very first time, brought museums and libraries into the portfolio. So that's a very exciting thing for us. We see ourselves, and we know we are very much there, not just for arts organisations, but also for museums and libraries as a national development agency. And I think what we saw with the portfolio this time was that we really reflected that.
Brilliant, thank you. So the second of our funding streams is our project funding. And in March of this year, we introduced Arts Council National Lottery project grants. And we've had quite a few questions about why we've introduced it and the change in name. So many people will remember Grants for the Arts, which we launched in 2002. I have very fond memories myself of filling in a paper application form in those days. We've introduced Arts Council National Lottery project grants. And one of the main reasons is to recognise the importance of the National Lottery good causes money and the effect it has, the investment we can make in arts and culture. But we've made some other changes as well. So as Darren mentioned, part of the portfolio was about integration. So with the project grants, we've made ensured that arts and museum and library focused activity is applicable and eligible for funding.
And the other thing to say, Eddie, also is that we've moved more money outside of London as well. So I think that's something that was very important for us. And so having a strong capital city and having that as part of our infrastructure is really, really vital. We don't want to take anything away from London, but we need other centres of production excellence around the country. So this new portfolio has actually got £170 million extra. That's a 5 percentage point shift outside of London. I think that's a direction of travel for us going forward as well.
That's a really good thing, and to influence that, as we said, the portfolio is the infrastructure, but with project funding we need to make sure it's happening across the country, not within just our city. So we've increased the budget for project grants to 97 million, so as Liz showed in the slide, it used to be 70 million. And we've also, as I said, widened it for museums and libraries, but also for creative industries and creative artists, so that some of their activity can be eligible for funding. So we've actually had a question from Joseph on Twitter about project grants. Joseph asks, is it true that project grants can't be used to support programmes of work? And if so, how are small non-MPO galleries in particular best supported in the future? Well, Joseph, thank you for your question. Project grants, as it says on the tin, it's for projects that we expect to have a start and an end and some aims and outcomes as part of the project. We will fund as part of project ongoing costs, but what we won't fund is year-on-year overheads. So we will look at repeat applications, but what we expect in repeat applications are some development. So if you're running a festival or a tour, we expect you to build on your previous work. So Joseph, if you want to head over to our website, and we have a wonderful information sheet called Repeat Projects, and you'll be able to find a lot more about how we will fund those sort of things.
One thing I just add to that, Eddie, is we have a new programme called Develop Your Creative Practice,
of course, yes,
which is aimed at individual practitioners. And we're putting £3.6 million a year into this, and this is very much about people on a creative journey. So rather than asking them to make an application with an outcome there and then, this is about developing their work right across all art forms, all sorts of creative practitioners. Lots and lots of interest in this, so it's going to be quite a highly prized grant to receive, but it's something that we think is really important. And again, we've been listening to people. They told us they wanted the Arts Council to have more of a relationship with individual practitioners as well as with organisations.
Brilliant. So we've talked about our national portfolio, our infrastructure, we've talked about our project funding that's available, but we also have a third channel. Liz, that's our development funds. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, so our development funds are funds that we use to make targeted interventions where we want to effect a change of some kind.
Right.
So they cover things like diversity, which we're going to talk a little bit about later on, resilience, innovation in business models, leadership development, that kind of thing. So for example, one of our biggest development funds that we're running at the moment, have been running for a number of years, is our Creative People and Places Fund. And we are, over the next 4 years, going to put £37 million into that fund. And that's looking to increase arts activity in areas of low engagement.
Oh, brilliant. We recently, last week, released more information about the scheme Creative People and Places, so please head over to our website to find out a bit more. And it's almost as Liz has read my autocue and the questions that are coming in, so we are going to move on to diversity. We've had another question on Twitter from Penny. Penny wants to know what we're doing to encourage performers with different backgrounds and abilities to be part of the arts and culture sector in a meaningful way. Darren, can I ask that of you?
Well, I think diversity is absolutely central to everything we do. I think we should be absolutely unambiguous in the messages that we're putting out, and people need to listen to this, is that we want the way that the art and culture sector in England looks and feels now and in future to represent the way it is in reality. So in terms of workforce, in terms of the people making the decisions, the leadership, and also in terms of the creative work that's being put on. And we've done a lot of work in this area, and we've gone on a bit of a journey, but there's still an enormous amount more that we need to do. And I think that's absolutely important, whether we're talking about ethnicity or we're talking about disability. We need to make sure that we are as representative as we possibly can be. We've done a lot of work in terms of equality action plans and in terms of our creative case for diversity. There is still more to do. We are still listening. We are still learning. We need to put the lens on ourselves in this area as well, and we will continue to do that. And I think it's one of the things that we see as being absolutely central to our next 10-year strategy to do more on this and to do better at it.
Brilliant. Liz, Darren talked about we need to look more at ourselves and to focus on us. But I think as highlighted in the annual report, we've made some strides internally in the last 12 months in terms of diversity. Can you kind of give us a flavour of that?
Yeah, so as Darren said, I mean, we're expecting a lot of the sector in terms of improving diversity, and we need to look to ourselves to make sure that we reflect that diversity as well. So one of the things that we've published for the first time in our annual report and accounts is something called our gender pay gap, which measures the difference in pay in the organisation between men and women. And that for us was 6.7% in favour of men on a mean difference, and a median difference of 2.6%. That's smaller than a lot of organisations,
sure.
and including the average for the civil service. But it's still not good enough, and we want to aim to have that perfectly balanced in the future. And one of the things we're doing is a wider piece of work to look at our recruitment practices, to try and encourage a wider range, a more diverse range of people to apply and come and work at the Arts Council. We've been working with some external consultants who've reviewed our practice and made various recommendations, which we're in the process of implementing now. And we're also looking at our employer brand and how we can attract more people to want to apply to come and work for the Arts Council. And we hope that range of things will help us attract and become a more diverse organisation.
Brilliant, that sounds great. Thanks both. Before we continue with more questions, we just want to show you this very short film that we released last year. It's called Thanks to You, and it's full of lots of examples of the brilliant work that we can fund as one of the National Lottery good causes. Take a look.
Thanks to you, we made this happen. Thanks to you, we learnt something new. Thanks to you, we were brought closer together. And we had the opportunity to take part in something truly extraordinary.
When you bought that National Lottery ticket, we got to play these amazing drums and wear this brilliant costume, and we realised that we were all astronauts.
And for one child, or classroom, or even a whole community, inspiration thrived and lives were made better. And that's why, for all the music,
The drama,
For dancing
and fun,
for opening eyes and minds,
and making a difference,
we just wanted to say thanks. This was all made possible, National Lottery player.
thanks to you.
We're teaming up again this year with other National Lottery good causes to thank players for helping fund such fantastic work. We want to work with anybody who's received National Lottery investment from us now or in the past. If you or your organisation have and want to find out more, please visit artscouncil.org.uk/thanks to you. So while we've been on air, we've had some questions via the ACE hashtag, and so I'm going to ask them of us all now. So first of all, from Huddersfield Literature Festival, would you consider streamlining the application process for funding? It takes 40 to 50 hours to prepare an application and additional time on progress reports. And some questions have the same answer every year, e.g. relevant experience. Liz, can I hand that to you?
Yes, so I mean the first thing I would say is that as a distributor of public funds and National Lottery players' money, we have to make sure that we have effective processes in place to make sure that money is spent wisely and to have transparent processes for how we make our decisions. And that's why we need to have a proper process and application forms and ensure that we have sufficient information to make good decisions. However, we recognise that this can place a burden on applicants. And we're always looking for ways to streamline our processes. I mean, Darren mentioned earlier that with our National Portfolio Organisation, for example, going forward, we've streamlined the process for smaller Band 1 organisations, so they have less information they have to provide. we have also been looking at the ways we can use technology to do this. For example, our new Grantium grant management system that went live in 2016 holds certain key information about an organisation, like its governance documents, forever, so that you don't need to keep resubmitting those every time you apply. So we're constantly looking to try and improve and streamline our processes, but it is against that background of having to make sure we're good stewards of public money.
Course. And I think you raised a really good point there. We introduced Grantium in 2016, and we've heard a lot of feedback from the sector, and we keep improving things. So when we launched project grants, we learned on everything that we did with grants for the arts. With developing your creative practice, we made the application to the key questions so that we could make sure we really hear what's going on. And I know lots of you phone our wonderful customer service team and give your feedback on Grantium, and we will and have been looking at that and in ways improving. And as Liz said, we always want to strive with technology to go forward and to make the application process as easy as possible. Thank you for that. Darren, one for you. It's from Ashford Arts Centre. How can community arts organisations forge meaningful connections with their local MPOs for the benefits of the wider community serviced by small, self-sustaining arts organisations?
I think this is a really interesting area, and I think we're thinking more and more and hearing more and more about everyday creativity, and creativity is a really central word, I would say, at the heart of everything that we do. So one of the things we've just published, which I would recommend people go and read on our website, is a report with 64 million artists, which has been a fantastic look at everyday creativity and cultural democracy, and I think that's something that's really worth people having a look at and a read of. We're on a journey there. It's not something that maybe we've concentrated too much on in the past, but I think it could be something that becomes important for us in the future. One of the things particularly Band 3 organisations have as an obligation is to foster a greater sense of work with smaller organisations and individual artists in their locality or in their art form. So we would really encourage them to have that two-way dialogue, and there are all sorts of things that a bigger organisation can do to help smaller organisations, not least in offering advice and time and being a convener of other organisations.
Of course, brilliant, thank you. We've had one about education from Andrew Davidson. How should universities and colleges be responding to the changing needs of the arts? More specialist institutions, more level 4 and 5 qualifications, more CPD, more short courses? Darren, what do you think is the best way forward?
Well, I think that universities are incredibly important partners for us in the arts and culture sector right across the piece. I think they do some amazing work. One of the things I would observe is that university leadership are really very culturally literate and culturally aware, and they have a great sense of place as well. So they share a responsibility for their places, the towns and cities, the counties in which they find themselves. And I think there's two reasons for that. One, they want to be as attractive as possible to students coming to study there. Two, they want to have the best possible workforce. So they want to be a place where the best academics want to come and live and can imagine spending decades of their lives. But also, if you go back to the original reason for a university, it is this great civic place of learning and thought, and there's something very important there. One part of the education world that I think sometimes gets forgotten is FE. So further education is incredibly important. If we want to go on that journey of social mobility, FE does enormous amounts about talking to young people who, for one reason or another, have not got on so well in the school system. It gives them a new opportunity. It takes them into that bridging between being a child and an adult, and it does it brilliantly well. And we should never forget the importance of FE.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that, Darren. We've had a question from the Bow Centre about Brexit, but we've got a section coming up, so I'll hold that question till later. We've had one from Carol Taylor. We run a small book festival featuring local writers. We only need £500. Is there no way for bidding for ACE funding for a small amount with all the paperwork? So I'd like to start off by saying, kind of as Liz said through her conversations, that because we give out government and National Lottery money, we must have an audit trail. We must have some sort of paperwork to kind of make it happen, and we do that through our Grantium grant management system. But Darren, are there ways forward that we might think about doing this a bit differently?
Yeah, I think again this is something that's come through in the consultation we've been doing around the 10-year strategy, and we're hearing that. And so I think we've got to go away and have a think, but is there a mechanism in the future for more micro grants for people that we can do cost effectively that actually can change people's lives with smaller amounts of money? I don't know the answer just yet, but I think it's something that we'll go away and think about.
Brilliant, thank you. We've also had quite a few questions about one of our key strategic goals, Goal 5, which is about children and young people and them having access to high quality arts and culture. Darren, can you kind of give us a flavour of the work we've done over the past 12 months in that area?
Yeah, so children and young people are absolutely central to what we do. I think we believe very, very strongly in developing the audiences of tomorrow and developing the creative practitioners of tomorrow. And when you just look at some of the numbers around our various funding streams, 1,147 applications through Grants for the Arts, as was, now National Lottery project grants. That's around 30% of them were grants that had children and young people's activities at their heart. If you look at our national portfolio organisations, 77% of them are doing work that centres around children and young people. So this is very, very important for us. We've also got some work since Nick Sirota came in as our chair. We've started the work on the Durham Commission, which is a partnership between ourselves and the University of Durham, looking at creativity in education. So there's some really great people that Nick has assembled around the table there, doing a lot of thinking at the moment, gathering a lot of data. There'll be some initial findings from that before the end of the year, which I think will be very exciting. And then we're doing some work with De Montfort University in Leicester. And this is very much about our 25-year creative talent plan. So this is saying, if you have parents or carers in your life who are culturally literate, culturally aware, and have a little bit of money, then if you look at what they do in their young person's life, they make a series of interventions, whether it's playing a musical instrument or reading books to them, going to the library, going to museums. If you don't have that in your life, you're not going to have a shared set of cultural experiences. I want to see what we can do to make sure that becomes part of every young person's life. And so we're going to work with De Montfort University to have a long-form 25-year research project to do that. And we'll do a lot of learning in Leicester, and then I hope very much that we will be rolling that learning out, and it will influence both our 10-year strategy this time round, but also in decades to come as well.
Wow, that sounds really exciting. We'll see how that goes. So we've talked about the work we're doing, but we're very aware of the kind of challenges and risks that are coming from us outside the sector. One word that you can't escape at the moment is Brexit. Liz, what are we kind of doing to support the sector through this period of uncertainty?
Yeah, so obviously Brexit is something everyone's talking about, is worried about. It's a key risk that we need to consider as an Arts Council in terms of the impact that's going to have on the sector.
Sure.
We've commissioned 3 research pieces on how the sector might be affected by Brexit. The sector currently benefits from around 40 million a year in EU funding. But actually the biggest issue for the sector is around movement of people. We're a very international sector, and being able to have artists working in and out of the country is really important. And so visa administration and border checks are a sort of key issue for the sector. So we're having continued conversations with government about all of these issues, making sure they've got all the information that they need about the issues the sector faces, and exploring ways that we can mitigate some of those issues. And a lot of that was reflected in the government's Chequers White Paper, which shows that we're having some impact in this area.
Of course. And Darren, I think one of the other issues that is facing the sector at the moment is the kind of downturn in local authority funding. What are Arts Council doing as this downturn starts to develop?
Well, local authorities are our biggest partner actually in terms of the amount of money that's being invested. So we don't underestimate the challenges that they're facing.
Right.
I think what we need to do is to work very hard in different parts of the country to find individual solutions. There's no one size fits all. So last week, for example, I was down in Plymouth, a city which has absolutely put investment in art and culture at the centre of their regeneration narrative, very, very strongly. They're great, united leadership across all political parties there. I was in Liverpool at the weekend, and you see there, what's happened for a city that in 2008 was European Capital of Culture. 10 years on, doing the celebrations this year, and we're very proud at the Arts Council to be funding the Giants that are coming back in 2 weeks' time. I should be back up to see the Giants. And what's great there is you see 1 million people on the streets enjoying live arts and culture there. So there are some great things happening, but there are some big challenges as well. And I think what we're doing with our offices across the country, and as you know, in 9 different places, and also with some work we're doing with on a new report looking at the value of cities, is to understand what more we can do. One thing I would say is it's not just about cities, though. They're big places with lots of people. We're also starting to now think more about what our strategy will be around investing in towns going forward, but also we shouldn't forget the challenges that rural communities face. They're a different set of challenges, but they're equally as valid, and we're working on all those areas. So it's quite a complex jigsaw, and I don't think there's any short-term or easy solutions, but we're absolutely committed to thinking about how our investment in places can have the best benefits going forward.
Brilliant, that's really useful, thank you. So unfortunately we're coming towards the end of our live stream, but I have one question left. So obviously we've been reviewing 1718, but it's, as we've mentioned, we're looking forward now. So I'm just going to ask you both what your kind of highlights are for this forthcoming year. Darren, if I can start with you.
So for me, a lot of our time now is spent thinking about something I've referred to a few times today, which is our new 10-year strategy. So this will run from 2020 through until 2030. And I think it's a great opportunity for us all to work together, not just those of us within the Arts Council, but the whole of everybody in this country who cares about art and culture, to work together to set a new agenda for change and for development and for exciting, innovative, creative art and culture in people's lives, whether it be individual artists, arts organisations, museums and libraries. We're still in listening mode at the moment. We've done a lot of work already. We've had the first part of our conversation. This autumn, we're going back out with another consultation programme where we'll be talking to people about some of the things we've heard and saying, this is what we're hearing from people. How do you feel about this? What do you think about it? Some people will like some parts. Some people will want to challenge us on other parts. That's fine. We are in listening mode this autumn, and that's really, really important for us to again, assimilate all of that information. And then next spring, we'll go out with a draft strategy to then see what people think of that before we publish the document in the autumn of next year. But for me, this is very much a big opportunity to reset things, but also to take the great, excellent, brilliant things that we already do and to make sure they're at the heart of our next 10 years of work.
Brilliant, thank you. Liz, what about you?
So for me, the National Lottery turns 25.
Of course, yes, this year.
Next year. It's amazing how time flies.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to see how we can come together with the other lottery distributors and with Camelot to mark the occasion. We're working now on some plans and events that things we might do to celebrate that landmark and to celebrate the amazing things that the National Lottery has funded over those 25 years. It's changed the arts and cultural landscape of this country, really. And we're really keen to show the people who play the National Lottery the connection between, the money that they pay for their tickets and where that goes, and the great things that has done.
Of course, brilliant. It's quite sad to remember that I still have my first ticket that I bought on the first day all those years ago, but still not a millionaire, but there we go. For me, I think it's kind of a mixture of what you both said in terms of we've launched our project grants, we've launched Developing Your Creative Practice, and we're starting to see the integration of arts and museums and libraries. And by March, we'll have had a year of both those funding schemes, and just to see the new collaborations, the new projects that are coming through, and to increase the kind of arts and culture offer that is available to everybody living in this country. So we've now come to the end of our live stream. Before we go, we'd like to thank Liz and Darren for taking part. Thank you very much, both.
Thank you for hosting us.
You're welcome. And to the Broadway Cinema for having us today. Finally, I also want to ask you if you could spare a few minutes to complete a short survey about how you found this event. You can find the survey on our website at artscouncil.org.uk/ask.ace. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.